It's on? Great.
Hello and welcome to the Shippensburg Area School District Committee of the Whole meeting. Turn it over to Mr. August.
Thank you very much. Two presentations tonight, one from the middle school on a proposed pilot within the 8th grade team. Presenting tonight, Mr. Barnes and
Lindsay Covert.
Lindsay from Teamology. Take it away.
Okay, great. Well, thank you everyone for allowing me to come in and speak on behalf of Teamology. I'm going to walk through some of the slides quickly, but please feel free to stop me and ask any questions. So, Lindsay Covert by background. I am an educator, former school counselor, spent about 6 years in public education before working for Penn State University at University Park alongside a research team. From there, formed a company now known as Teamology, which I will share a little bit more about. We're going to go through some introductions. I'll do a presentation, talk about platform and security, and of course, kind of follow your process as far as Q&A. So just some stats. Currently, over 75% of parents are reporting their #1 concern is their students' social, emotional, or mental health. Average wait time across the nation is 6 to 12 months to see a counselor or therapist. We're often looking at 1 to 1,200 students for school counselor, or I'm sorry, school psychologist to child ratio, and 1 to 500 students for average school counselor to child ratio. Just a little delay there. Just some general information from NCES. So from 2000 to 2022, 328 casualties in schools from active shootings. 5% of students aged 12 to 18 report they've been afraid of attack during the school year. 15% of public schools report that bullying occurs among students at least once a week. And 10% of public schools report student verbal abuse of teachers. About 15% report acts of student disrespect to teachers other than verbal abuse. So just laying the groundwork for kind of what our students are experiencing nationally, not very specific to Shippensburg. And lastly, we are experiencing a children and youth mental health crisis. 1 in 6 children between the ages of 2 and 8 are diagnosed with a mental health condition, and by age 14, 50% are diagnosed with a mental health condition. So who are we? Who's Teamology? We are a social, emotional, mental wellness platform built for K-8 students upon 15 plus years of research from Penn State University. We're CASEL and ASCA aligned. We're designed to simplify, strengthen, and support the social, emotional, and mental wellness for students, families, educators, and communities. We have proven results for improvements in behavior, test scores, and the community. And we are in partnership with the home of Mr. Fred Rogers out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, WQED. There's just a quote, Team Talk provides educators with insight into student emotions. It has helped take the guesswork out of how students are feeling each day. Team Talk has given our staff a way to objectively understand student emotions rather than rely on intuition. So features you'll hear me talk about today: easy to use curriculum. This is a choice of a district whether they decide to use and implement the curriculum. Through the platform known as Team Talk, we offer daily check-ins, biannual strengths-based screenings, Team Talk coaching, data, and analytics. So this becomes scalable and sustainable with every child in the district. Introducing our 7 characters. They are the bridge into working with your students. It's an easy way for students to start to feel comfortable and understand these very specific skills. So we have Harper, who promotes helping others. Paco promotes positive change. Amelia, acceptance. Philo, problem solving. Ruby, resilience. Lamar, leadership. And just new to this year, Leo, for learning. So thinking about it through the lens of diverse learners. So I want to just pause quickly to help you kind of understand why this product was developed. Think about a situation. We'll call it test time. Students are thinking, those thoughts turn into feelings, and eventually those feelings can turn into behaviors if there aren't ways for students to understand how to process feelings. Just quick brain science lesson here. What we know is that the amygdala, the emotional part of the brain, determines when threats are in front of us. So this can kind of trigger that fight or flight response. and essentially gives us a chance to say we can stop and either figure out how we're going to process our feelings. And if you look at the rational part of the brain, that prefrontal cortex, once we start to train or teach kids how to process feelings, they're able to then control those behaviors that I just spoke of. So we're going to dive a little bit further into team talk. So how does this work? I want you to focus, there's a lot of stuff on this slide, but primarily focus on the diagram in the middle. At the top, you'll see a student beside one of the characters that student chose. That student's going to come in, engage with the character. As they go through the process of any one of our features, we're going to gather information on the back end. Our engine, which is, this is a human plus AI approach, meaning our engine only knows what we've trained it, so it's not open AI, as they call it. So it's looking for very specific triggers, very specific information that has been trained by professionals, counselors, psychologists, educators. We're going to analyze those concerns, and if you look at the bottom right, we're going to start to triage those concerns. I'm sure you all know about MTSS. It's the way that we can understand how students are triaged, correct? And how they can be serviced in certain areas, not only in academics, but also for the purposes of social, emotional, mental health. So we start to place those different phrases, keywords, triggers into buckets of concern, which then put them into triaging, or where do we want to help students across the platform. On the back end are professional coaches. So we have a full team at Teamology that offers services just like you would here at the school. So school counselors and educators. Once they are looking at that information and verifying that whatever has been triggered is accurate, we then contact the school team. So it does become kind of an extension of the team here in your district. Oops, I think I just hit it twice. Sorry.
Do you want to go on to the next one?
I think I hit it twice accidentally, and okay, there we go. So this is the proprietary triage approach. So when you look at the tiered systems of support, what you'll find is there's red flagged concerns, orange flagged concerns, and yellow flagged concerns. So the idea is, how can we best help your team here at the district understand what students are needing support now, what students are starting to develop support needs, and help your team understand where to deliver services as they get the information in real time from your students in the platform. So how does this work? There's a little bit of a delay, I think. There we go. So as I mentioned, I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because we really didn't talk about curriculum with Shippensburg School District, but we do offer a curriculum that works alongside Team Talk that at any given time, if you want to circle back on that, I'd be happy to talk through that, but given time, I'll just keep going. So as I mentioned, the character engagement really allows for students to start to feel more comfortable and confident coming into the platform and really interfacing with these characters that have been designed and developed in a way that helps the students engage a little bit more successfully in the platform. So it's more than just a check-in. It's not the idea of just picking an emoji and moving on with the day. It's helping your school teams understand in real time. The character will pop up. How are you feeling today? Giving the student an opportunity to say, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling happy. And that information goes directly to your educators in real time, giving them a pulse of the entire classroom, essentially then the entire school, for administrators to understand which students might need a little bit more support. Okay, I thought I hit twice then. The Team Talk screening then, a separate feature in the platform, is developed using the Children and Youth Resilience Assessment. That's an evidence-based assessment, really looking for how are students showing up from a strengths perspective. So walking through the platform and taking the screening then allows for the school to understand a snapshot that can then be shared back. For example, we have districts sharing those in parent-teacher conferences. Because I will say, as a parent myself, of an elementary and middle school student, oftentimes it's really difficult. If my child isn't needing the extra services and support, I don't necessarily know details of how they're doing in school from a wellness perspective. So just looking through here, tips and strategies to improve resilience is really the focus of this screening, and this will give you a nice kind of understanding of areas that we might suggest that tips and strategies be used in school, at home, and then directly to the students. And then the team talk coaching. This is a piece that I think where we can help probably the most when it comes to capacity issues in schools. Oftentimes students are in need of support, and most of our counselors or other support staff are seeing the highest need students. And I go back to my days. I left public education with 800 kids on my caseload that year. So most of my time was spent with a small percentage of kids. It doesn't mean that other students don't need support. And you can think about this from the perspective of maybe there's stress going on at home with a test or schoolwork, things that are very typical, average, everyday kinds of stuff that our kids are dealing with. If they don't know how to communicate that, those little stressors become bigger stressors. So then we start hearing kids say, I don't want to go to school. I don't like being at school. But we really have no indication of why. So this is a way to start thinking about how do we proactively and preventively help kids start to learn communication skills, start to understand how can we kind of tap into our own social emotional abilities. Just like, you know, I'm an employer, I'm looking for those employees that understand how to regulate their emotions, how they can be team players. 100% of our kids, 100% of us as adults need those skills, and they're actually the most employable skills that are out there these days. So this is a way, if it's coaching, it's not counseling. I want to make that very clear. If there is a need for counseling, that's where, going back to that triaging, we get that information to the right people at your school district, and then they make those decisions on what students need in terms of further intervention. But the coaching is very much an educational process. It is not a therapeutic process. I'm clicking it. There we go. So let's take a look at how we're understanding students' emotions in seconds. Where if you take a look here on the left, that's giving the teacher an understanding of how many students have checked in. In terms of their comfort level, how do they show up? How comfortable are they when they're showing up to the start of the day? And then you can see how it goes from high level to medium, and then of course all the other students that might show up happy or proud would not be a concern. Continued class emotions. So if you, again, think about kids that are showing up, it's really nearly impossible these days for teachers to understand from the first 5 minutes in the day, if they have 20, 30, 40 kids that they're seeing in the first couple of hours of school, how can they possibly know how those students are feeling and how those feelings are going to affect behavior and learning? So this is a very quick way, very quick snapshot to get that information directly to the school team. And then over time, we can really start to help the district understand how are kids feeling on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And how does that map onto academics and achievement? Because we know from brain science, if students aren't happy or at least comfortable when they're learning, it's really difficult to learn. If I'm sad, if I'm scared, if I'm angry, it's almost impossible for me to effectively learn in the classroom. So this gives an opportunity for the district to kind of just understand from a high level down to a student level how to better assist and better help. I've shared with you kind of the triage approach. So the breakdown of the flagged concerns is in front of you. So red flags, anything that would pop up, physical abuse, self-harm, physical threat, domestic violence, emotional abuse, anything that the triage system flags as red would be because of those concerns. Anything that, and I'll let you read the rest, the yellow concerns and orange concerns. And this is important because, again, we have a monitoring system in the background. This is not an engine just sharing this information back with the school district. These are professionals that sit back and look and analyze this data to make sure it's all correct. And that information is going directly to the school team. We do offer professional development. I won't spend time here, but happy to answer any questions about that. From a privacy perspective, it's really important that we are very upfront that Teamology does not use or sell protected data to any commercial or for commercial or marketing purposes. Very minimal student identifiable information. Your school owns your data, so that is not Teamology's data. And there's no passive data gathering, so you know everything that is coming through the system. And then compliances, FERPA COPA, HIPAA, aligned with PIPED policies and safeguards, and then poised for Digital Charter Implementation Act adoption. And those questions, if you have anything about that, my technology team would be more than happy to connect with you on that. Further information around data and security. So just some student takeaways. It is very much possible to change a person's life around. No matter how deep they went into the darkness, you can always guide them to the light. That's from a student. It's possible to make a difference in others' lives because you always have the opportunity to help others turn their lives around. Again, that's from a student. And then educator takeaways. Team Talk really helps me be proactive in responding to all of my student needs in the classroom. It helps my students share their emotions and others express themselves. Team Talk helps me communicate more effectively about student needs with counselors and administrators. Thank you.
Mr. Barnes, did you want to talk about how it might be implemented at the, the middle school and whomever else?
All right, thank you. I think at the middle level, I think our goal would we start today with a 10-minute homeroom, and since we're one-to-one with our Chromebooks, as long as technology is working and functioning the way it needs to be, that would be how we would just do a quick analysis of the students in particular homeroom. The goal would get a pilot program. I think Mr. August mentioned 8th grade. The ideal situation would be us to have a pilot team in 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade to give us the ability to look at the results at the end of the school year, and hopefully, if it would go well this year, and we would continue to get funding from the foundation, that we'd be able to do this school-wide for the 25-26 school year.
So to summarize, one team to start, or the entire grade level?
Going from the foundation, I think the money is there for us to have at least, I would say, one team out of each grade level. That would be the ideal situation from my perspective, not just 8th grade, but one team out of 6th, 7th, and 8th. So we have 3 teams in each grade. It's ideally, 3 out of the 9 teams within the building.
You mentioned the foundation, which I know the funding for this, if approved, would come from the foundation.
The foundation has been one of the driving forces behind this, and I think that they've been wanting to get some ideas up and running at the middle school for a couple of years prior to me starting at the middle school, and now that I'm still there, I think this is an avenue that they want to be able to pursue to give back to the community, help our students as well.
Can I ask some logistics questions?
Sure.
So is it right to call it software, or it will run on the Chromebooks?
Yeah, actually, one of the last slides Lindsay was showing, it actually will correspond to connect to Clever, and Dr. Stevens probably is, is a lot more intelligent in that arena than I am. But what happens is that would automatically go to the instant sign-on for our students, because it will coincide with Clever. Our students will be able to open up their laptops, sign in, and would have access to the Team Talk right away.
And you're envisioning this happening in that first homeroom period where they just sort of do this check-in, and is that also where they would have the opportunity to communicate with the characters?
Yep, all that's happened simultaneously. Yep.
Okay.
How long typically does a session take for a student to interact with?
So the check-in is about 90 seconds, and then a screening it's about 15 minutes per module. So we do work with the school to determine the best space to do the screenings if that's what they choose to do, and then a coaching session can go anywhere from 20 to 30.
Can you elaborate on what a screening is?
Sure. Do you want?
Yeah.
Going back to the screening is based on the Children and Youth Resilience Assessment. So it's essentially 4 modules that focus on open-ended questions where a child can demonstrate, for example, with friends. Do we have friends? How do we interact with friends? Things like that. In school, do we feel prepared for school? Are we comfortable? Things like that. So they're going to go through and they're going to have the ability to share information. And then after each module is complete, a report will be then provided to the school for each student to share with the school and the family.
So just so I understand, the screening happens for everyone?
That's up to the school district. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Everyone that would opt in, like our pilot program, everyone does that.
I can hang out with her.
So this is an opt-in program. So parents would get notification if they want their student to participate?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And it wouldn't look any different. The kids are going to have their Chromebooks in front of them, so it's not like anyone's going to look any different during that particular time period because they're opting in or opting out, right?
Have our counselors and social workers chimed in about this?
Yeah, they were actually part of the presentation at the middle school back in the spring.
Okay.
So I think they look at this as another avenue to be able to give us a little bit of support. Like one of the areas that we would have to, in real time, we would have to coordinate from the information that Lindsay was saying, getting sent to the counselors and administrators, how we streamline that and attack that information to do what's best for the kids. I think us just trying to figure out what this looks like and how it actually comes to fruition, I think would be something that we would definitely be working through.
Are they seeing it as a tool that will give them, well, a tool that gives them more options and more information than they are currently getting? Or is it
Yes.
one more thing to do?
Well, I would venture to say that over the last couple weeks, this is obviously specifically through the community in the middle school been a tough beginning of the school year for a lot of reasons. I think if we were looking at this as another avenue for students to be able to share their thoughts and specific feelings. What we know about students, the preteens and teenagers, they're not exactly going to come up to mom and dad, probably give them a hug and a kiss and say, hey, this is bothering me today. So we're looking at this as another opportunity for kids to be able to express what they're thinking and believing and needing in a safe environment.
So you'd catch kids that potentially would be falling through the cracks because they're not having those conversations with parents, or they don't have parents who have those conversations with them, or whatever.
I don't want to speak for Lindsay, but I probably would guess that's one of the tenets of how this team talk was created to begin with.
Yeah, so really the idea, and back 15, 20 years ago when I was a counselor, I used to call them my gray area kids, so before MTSS was really popular. My concern weren't the kids that were showing up to my door that I would have the ability to kind of have a pulse on. It was more geared towards what's the middle of the pack, the kids that I know need me but don't have the ability to communicate that, and I didn't have the capacity to meet with them. So it really was just kind of the thought and design of it was based out of what about the middle of the tier, that tier 2 student. But the more research we started doing and the more kind of the world started expanding, because a lot of this research was done prior to the pandemic, what we started to find was that we could have a tier 1 student, so somebody that appears to be very, well organized, doing well academically, but for example might have test anxiety. And some of that anxiety is difficult to explain for a child. So that anxiety could eventually turn into maybe a 3rd, 4th grade student. We would start seeing that student in 7th, 8th, 9th grade start to really appear highly anxious, which then can relate to other mental health issues, as you know. So it was really trying to kind of identify what were some early triggers, some early signs that we could start to kind of track and even inform the parents on to kind of give that student a voice.
So in other words, it's a way to, did you call it tier 1?
Yeah.
It's trying to identify tier 1 students who might become tier 2 and 3 before things get out of hand.
Right, reducing the likelihood that they ever get up to the most severe here. Yep.
And just to define, when you say social and emotional, you're talking about the child's specific social comfort level within the school and their emotional well-being.
That's right. You're right. Yep.
And all with the purpose of helping them academically, because if they don't have that mental health stuff in place, they aren't
That's
going to
right.
function academically in the schools. So this is all about getting kids the best foundation they can have to academically perform.
Right, because we know that if they aren't emotionally doing well, or from a mental health perspective doing well, they can't academically perform well.
Is this being used in like neighboring districts? Is there any data to prove that there's benefits?
Yeah, so we did a small pilot with Waynesboro Area School District, so we could get that specific information. So you don't have that on me tonight, but there's we've done a wide variety of work across the state, and then even beyond. We're in 6, going on 7 states coming up here in the fall, so we can get you that data, that information for sure.
Can you just give me like a quick rundown of how that would actually work as a student? They would come in, get their Chromebook, there would be where they could put like how they're feeling, like a smiley face, neutral face, or sad face, and then it would be some questions they would answer briefly.
Right. So they would open their Chromebook. So it's a little bit more than just a smiley face. So it does actually, you click in and go through what we call the check-in. They would select who they wanted to check in with. The character would say, hey, how are you doing today? They would have the option of selecting a variety of feelings. So it could be scared, upset, happy, excited. And then from there, we do capture the intensity, which is unique to teamology. So the idea is if I'm a 5 mad, that prediction of behavior, if I'm a 5, I'm going to probably act out from behaviorally a lot faster than if I'm a 2 mad. So we're trying to help them understand like how they can monitor their emotions. And then from there, we do give them, if they want, we say, do you want a tip or strategy on how to handle anger? So it could be count to 5. So research-based tips and strategies. All the while, that information is going directly to the teacher so they can capture that instantly.
Okay, thank you.
Question, since it's an opt-in, this is going to go contrary to my normal thought process. Since it's an opt-in, do you find a lot of kids that don't have parents that really engage with them, that they won't opt in, and those are some of the kids that really need the help?
So a student can certainly not participate just based on them not wanting to, but most, we do require, or we don't, the district does require an opt-in form. So I can't say for sure in terms of, we don't have the information as teamology as to which parents are opting in with which students, so that would be hard for me to answer, but I kind of know where you're coming from with that. Don't have that information for you.
It seems to me that if it was a mandatory in and you could do an opt-out, it's completely backwards from what I'm used to preach.
Right, yeah.
We can all change, Kirk.
All the kids, the parent that doesn't engage quite as much will probably not even see the opt-out paper.
You're probably right about that.
That is certainly a huge drawback, Mr. Noggle. Yeah, but I think to get things off the ground, you got to like pilot and iterate. I think that's the key term here. Yeah.
Thank you. Just a question.
That's a good question. Other questions from the board?
Maybe not a question, but a thank you, I guess, to the foundation who has really spearheaded this, was what it sounded like, or at least financial backing and support for this, because it's something that I think everyone has identified that it's a glaring need, not just here, but everywhere. And this might be a really helpful tool for us, and hopefully it ends up being successful.
Yeah, truly, I mean, when we look at those end data points, it's all summative data. This allows us to be proactive, to a far greater extent. And I just happened to pull up the profile of a grad under resiliency. It talks about an individual persisting through challenges and setbacks, build and keep positive relationships, apply healthy practices to promote physical and mental well-being, accept feedback and criticism as a way to improve, and recognizes and responds to emotions appropriately. I feel like this would check a lot of those boxes.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Jen could talk. So I'm Rebecca Gardner, and I am a board member for the foundation. And listening to your questions, the only reason that I want to come speak, because I do not like public speaking, but I want to let you know that I have read the material, watched the material, and tried to study it and understand it. And our children will come to school, they'll do their daily check-in, there will be questions. When they answer those questions, there's a live person on the backside of that for all those questions, believe it or not. Like, there are people, these are not algorithms just responding to our children. These are live people, and if they see their counselors, and if they see a red flag or an orange flag, then they notify our team, at our school district because they have a master's level counselor reviewing that on the backside. And they will come to our team by phone call, well, maybe email, but by phone call, and let our team know, which could be a teacher, a guidance counselor, a principal, assistant principal, whoever we decide to be our emergency team in the middle school. Teamology and Team Talk reaches out to them directly to save that child in that crisis situation. So if there is a true red flag, that child will not go home to that red flag, hopefully, is our intention. That child will be identified because they were too afraid to talk to their counselor, too afraid to tell their teacher, but that person on that screen is easy for them to click buttons, because that's what our kids do today. Our kids use their phone, they use their social media, they click buttons, and they don't think there's a person on the other end of that. But there is with Teamology. And I just am very grateful that all of you have listened to this presentation, because it's become even more important to me now than ever. And in May and April and whenever, it was truly important because my own son struggled, and I would ask Mr. Barnes, check in on him. He's like, he's great, he's happy, he's having a good day at school. That was not the case. And I think that if they have something like this, they have more power than they know for people to help them. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Thank you both. So next up, Mrs. DeLong is going to walk us through our PCCD grant and Ready to Learn grant information for the board, to talk about where this money's going, or what the proposal is, when we bring it forward to you. So
can I just talk from here, or do you want me to?
I think you're good from here.
Okay. So up on the screen there, I have some information about our PCCD grant this year. But before I talk about this year's grant, I wanted to just kind of give you just a little bit of historical data too. So when in 2022, 2023, the school district was awarded $304,604, and the PCCD grant was divided into a physical safety component and then also a mental health component. And in the physical safety, so we had $152,000 in each category. And the district used the physical safety money to purchase cameras and servers and badge swipes for the district. And then the mental health part of it was when we first entered into a contract with Effective School Solutions for the Tier 2 counseling additions. Then last year in 23-24, the district received $40,000 for a physical safety grant, and if you remember, we are planning to use that money to build the safety traffic bollards at the other buildings. And then we received $144,000 for a mental health grant, and we used all of that money to continue our ESS contract for this academic year. Then we also applied and received a $450,000 competitive PCCD grant. And so that money is planned to be used to finish the bollards, upgrade the middle school security cameras, because since we built the new addition, there are a bunch of places in the middle school where they don't have safety cameras, so we want to make sure we add those. And we finished that competitive grant out with the remaining part of the ESS contract. So I just kind of wanted to give you a little bit of, just from my perspective of the years that I've been here, what I know we have used the PCCD grant money for. It's always been stipulated that it has to be used in school safety and mental health, and there are very specific uses for the PCCD grant money. Also, the PCCD grant money has to follow supplement, not supplant rules, which just means that you can't take something that's already in the budget and pay for it with this grant money. It has to be something to supplement either what we're currently doing or to be in addition to something that we're doing. So in talking with the admin team, we have some ideas for the grant money that we are awarded this year. So it's a meritorious grant, which means it's not competitive. So each school district in Pennsylvania is awarded a certain amount of money based on the average daily membership or the number of students who come to school on a regular basis, plus a little supplement. So our award this year was $167,986. So I just want to point out that over the 3 years, it's going down and down and down. So every year it's gotten less. So it went from 304,000 in 22-23. Last year we had 184,000, plus then we did get the competitive grant. And then this year it's 167,986. So these are some ideas that we have. Oh, and I guess the other thing I need to say too is that we have to turn the grant around by the end of September. So they just released the grant about 2 weeks ago, and then we have to have everything into the system by September 26th. So it's a very quick turnaround. So that's why I'm trying to talk to you tonight. And we've had some meetings, and so we have some ideas. We would like to consider supplementing our SRO program by adding a second officer to our SRO team. So that would be supplementing what we're currently doing with the Camp Hill Police Department. What's that?
Shippensburg.
What did I say? Gosh, Shippensburg. Ooh, where'd that come from? Then 22 years of training. Then the next thing that we had an idea about was to hire an additional temporary social worker at the K-5 level. And we say temporary because it is grant money. So, you know, if we don't know if it would still be renewed year over year. So we have to be careful about that, unless, you know, we would want to build that into the regular budget. And some ideas we had for that position was, perhaps they could do some lessons or small groups. Perhaps they could help the school counselors with collecting and sorting career evidence. So we really have to, again, figure out what would be the best use of that person's time in, you know, communicating with the counseling department and building principals. But just, you know, that idea of trying to get some more help with our elementary counselors and our, we just have one elementary social worker for 4 buildings as of right now.
And that's the point I would make is, you know, they're all, you know, have a big caseload. You know, our elementary social worker, there's one for 4 buildings, where there's one for the middle school and one for the high school. So the student ratio numbers, you know, lend itself to this position helping out at that level.
And then finally, another allowable expense is to purchase an additional AED for the new athletic complex. Purchasing AEDs is an allowable expense for the PCCD grant, and we'll definitely need an AED at that location. And then finally, we would be interested in purchasing some additional walkie-talkies for buildings, so to increase communication in our buildings and across the district.
You can do all of that with $167,000.
Well, it's possible. Like, based on the budget that I built, I think it's possible.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, we're not talking 20 walkie-talkies, but yeah, maybe.
It's the people that are expensive, I think.
Yeah, it is always.
To your point, a lot of needs, and we tried to be as strategic as possible.
That's a pretty good list for $160,000.
And then the other thing that I wanted to tell you about was the Ready to Learn block grant. So Christy talked to us maybe the last meeting or the meeting before that about the Ready to Learn block grant. And so historically, we've received about $500,000 in the Ready to Learn grant, and we've used it for the very first bullet on the list, which is to pay for full-day kindergarten. So historically, that's what we've used the Ready to Learn grant money for. This year, we got that Ready to Learn grant, plus then we received the tax equity supplement of about $1.2 million. And so we can use, there is a list, and I can just hold it up here, of acceptable uses for that money as well. So in talking again with the business department and the leadership team here, we are recommending that we continue to use that Ready to Learn block grant money to pay the salaries and benefits. Instead of just 5 kindergarten teachers, pay all 12 kindergarten teachers with that money. And then additionally, we hired 2 new English language learner teachers, and so we could transfer their salaries or pay for those salaries with that money. And then, according to our calculations, that leaves about $166,000-ish that would remain that we can use to offset cyber charter costs. So that's also an allowable expense with this money. So this is, they call it a block grant, but I mean, it doesn't follow that I'm aware of the same supplement rules. It's just money that's added into the budget.
Is that state money or is it federal?
State money.
State?
Yeah. Any questions for me?
And that's reoccurring every year?
We don't know that for sure.
So the Ready to Learn is the amount
It'll fluctuate.
fluctuates.
We don't know how much though.
That number I think was the state's, and Christy can help me out, attempt to somewhat mitigate the cyber, rather than do true cyber charter reform. They threw extra money into the Ready to Learn block grant.
Yeah, they call it the Adequacy and Tax Equity Supplement. So we got our $500,000 that we usually get, and then that $1.2 million extra. That's that supplement.
So I think what Mr. Donovan's maybe hinting at, is there some risk in paying salaries with a grant?
It definitely helps with our budget deficit to shift that on, but we've been down that road before.
Right.
So
it is
this at least gives us the opportunity for revenue to catch up. And I don't think the cyber charter issue's going away. So I think there might be a commitment. We're banking on a commitment from the state that this is their solution to the cyber charter question. But you are absolutely correct.
Okay.
There's some inherent issues there.
But those positions are already built into the budget, so
Correct.
they're not new or anything
okay.
like that.
That was going to be my question. So we've already planned for that, all those positions. So we
Right.
just kind of
We haven't taken them
defending
out of the
ourselves.
budget and
Yeah.
put them here. They're still in the budget. We have to be careful about how we add positions that may take that spot. So within the budget, this is I would say a prudent way to help us try to reduce the deficit.
So this is frosting.
Correct. We are going to need to hold those spots in the budget, though.
Yeah.
To your point, so that it doesn't become Esser's Part 2,
Yeah,
the revenge. So. Any other questions on PCD?
When do we decide? I mean, or do we have to decide on what we're used, like the PCCDE? What exactly? Like, say if we can't fit everything in that 167,000, do we have to decide as a board what we would snip it? The only reason I say that is because I think, and I could be wrong, but I think we've gotten some separate grants for AEDs from another source in the past. I could be wrong. So, my thought would be, while greatly important, that one maybe we could, if we had to, we could find a way somewhere else and then cover the rest. But
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, so we'll have to, the way the grant writing works is you have to put in a preliminary budget. And then if we would, start pricing things out and it, is not going to work, I would just have to do a budget revision with the grant process. So, but you have to have something in the system by September 26th or you get nothing. So,
let's not do that.
yeah, so this is where we're starting.
And there can be grant revisions as well, depending on circumstances.
All right, so we are going to roll right into our planning and action meeting. I did just want to note that the board did meet in executive session this evening at 6:30 regarding negotiations. Mrs. Lentz, roll call.
Mr. Jim Bard.
Here.
Mr. Mike Carey.
Here.
Mr. Levi Kressler.
Here.
Dr. Nathan Goetz. Dr. Michael Lyman.
Here.
Mr. Kurt Noggle.
Here.
Mr. Fred Scott.
Here.
Mr. Darren Donovan.
Here.
Mrs. Steph Everly.
Here. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As we begin our deliberations this evening, let us once again be reminded of our duty to represent all of the children of this school community, regardless of age, sex, race, or creed, and regardless of need or ability. This meeting is being live streamed and uploaded to the district's YouTube channel. May we now have a moment of silence to reflect on our thoughts, plans, and actions on behalf of the students in the Shippensburg Area School District. And may we also remember Helen Louise Wagner, a 1949 graduate of Shippensburg Area Senior High School. Mr. August, are there any changes to this evening's agenda?
No, ma'am.
Is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
Ray Scott, make a motion to approve.
Motion made by Mr. Scott, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Carey. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the citizens' comments regarding agenda items, there are two. Please identify yourself by name, borough, and township and indicate which agenda item you are speaking about. We have come to the portion of the meeting providing an opportunity for the public comment. The board will follow the procedures established in policy 903, public comment in board meetings, which is accessible through the district's website. This time is designated for district residents and taxpayers to comment on the items listed for action or deliberation on tonight's agenda. All individuals wishing to comment this evening must have completed the document designated for request to comment and submitted the document to the board secretary prior to the start of the meeting. Second comment portion is at the end of the meeting. Mr. Hess.
Hello, everyone. Tim Hess, Southampton, Cumberland. First of all, I'd like to show my support of the passing of 5A, which is the co-op with Shalom Christian for wrestling. I think it's a great idea, and it'll be great for both of our wrestling teams. Next, I would like to reluctantly show my support for 5R, which is the payment for the traffic study at a Friday night football game that the Borough Council and their zoning board has required. Like most here today, I believe it's a waste of $12,000, since we already know the answers and the fact that there are currently more spaces on campus than there are at the park. However, if it's required to get Friday night football at Greyhound Stadium, I guess it has to be done. So that brings me to a subject that I'm not quite understanding, and that is why we are not currently pursuing getting the lights at our Greyhound Stadium. We all have heard that the bids for the stadium came back 1.3 or 1.4 million under what was already approved to be paid for the stadium. In addition, K&W has given us a rough estimate of $800,000 to $1 million for the lights. So unless I'm missing something, we should have the money to purchase the lights right now. The only obstacle in the way is this traffic study. However, as it was pointed out several times at the last board meeting, this study is only to count vehicles, so the borough zoning board will be satisfied with the number of parking spaces we have on campus to have Friday night football. The traffic study has nothing to do with lights. Also keep in mind, boys soccer, girls soccer, field hockey, track, band, and community events could all use under these lights. So again, unless I'm missing something, we currently have the money to purchase the lights, and we have nothing stopping us from getting the lights. So why are we not moving forward with the lights now as construction is going on, instead of waiting until sometime next year to have someone come back out and put the lights up, which what I would assume is going to be more expensive. I would also like to ask if we even need Borough Council's approval to put these lights up. We didn't need their approval for the scoreboard or the sound system. Will we need approval to eventually put in restrooms, concessions, and a permanent locker room building? I don't know the answer to this, but I would hope that, or think that our solicitor may have some recommendations on this topic. If we don't need council's approval, then let's get the lights now. If we do need their approval, let's get on their agenda and have someone ask for their approval to put these lights up as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hess.
Mr. Hess, just to answer some questions, the district is currently pursuing a quote from the lights people that should be coming in soon. That will give us a definitive number. The number you're quoting is a couple years old. I remember that when I started here. And to answer your other questions, we absolutely do need Borough Council's approval to move forward with lights. It was stipulated in the land development agreement. So they didn't stipulate anything else, but they did stipulate that. So.
But even though they stipulated, and I understand that, but nothing stops us from pursuing it before that.
So we are taking those steps once again.
Yeah, I understand.
When we get the traffic study, they will then be able to tell us what additional, if any, parking will be required. That would have to be factored into the budget, Mr. Scott, Mr. Hess, to determine how much parking they're going to require. We would then ask for variances. We will go through that process. But once again, until we get this traffic, and I don't know that study is the right word, traffic evaluation done, those will follow soon after. So the most we can do at this point is get a price for lights and begin the process of getting approvals through the borough to have them installed.
But what happens if we take it down and they approve it? What's the next step?
Then we would enter into a construction agreement with the engineers to get it done and put it out to bid.
But I understand Mr. Hess's question is, why can't we start the ball rolling, as I asked you before? Start it now, and if we get to that point, they say yes or no. That's the only thing.
So they're not going to say yes or no until they get the parking evaluation done. So they won't give an answer until that is done. And then when that's done, we will go through the process to determine how much lights are going to cost, how much additional parking they're going to require, and begin that. If that's the will of the board, we can bring that forward.
If I can point out, the traffic study is for Friday night football, correct?
Yes.
We're going to play boys soccer, girls soccer, field hockey,
Yeah.
all the other things other than Friday night football. So I'm not understanding why the borough.
Sure. I don't have those questions, Mr. Hess. I would encourage you to go to the Borough Council meeting and ask them those questions.
Unfortunately, I don't live in the borough, so they won't let me
Okay.
talk.
So we don't have those answers. Those are Borough Council questions that, they have public meetings too.
Okay.
Mrs. Wolfinger.
Hello, board members. Becky Wolfinger, Southampton Township, Franklin County. You guys already know where I stand with item 5T on the agenda tonight. You've received countless emails from me, and I know you've also received emails from parents as well. I want to share how not having adequate staffing just in the music department at the high school has affected my two students already this year. On Friday, my two students who participate in marching band sat in a class with 89 other students and were given zero instruction during their flex time of 40 minutes. Students are able to leave for clubs, but there are many students in that class that are not currently active in clubs. So students literally sat there for 40 minutes doing nothing. Students were not allowed to get instruments out of their cages per the teacher who was assigned to the class that day, and since the music teacher is not in the building. This is normally a time where students would practice with their sections, independently practice, or work with their teacher to address their problems or concerns, or to practice for district band tryouts, or to practice and receive help with upcoming college auditions. Again, sharing my own son's experience, my son came into the school year feeling confident in auditioning for the first time ever for district band because he had the support last year during Flex to help him work on his skills to develop them. Now, Isaac does not want to try out for district band because he does not have the support this year to feel confident that he would do well at his audition. I also want to let you know of another way my student is impacted. He is no longer allowed to pick up his instrument at the end of the day because there's no teacher there. So students are told to leave their instruments in the hallway and grab them as they leave at the end of the day. I just purchased my son's brand new trombone of $4,000. So you tell me if it turns up missing or it's damaged, who's liable for it? My son, who has been debating between going to college for civil engineering or becoming a music teacher, has now, based off of his recent experience, decided he no longer wants to consider music for a career. And he is not the only student who has shared this with me, as there are multiple students of the 20 seniors that were pursuing music. As a mom, this breaks my heart that the decisions being made that are impacting Isaac's experience have shifted his mindset enough that he is no longer going to pursue his passion and just settle for a career. I am asking for you guys to please vote for this music teacher position. A part-time position is only a Band-Aid. It only covers a wound that is bleeding profusely. I hope you guys have conversations with the music teachers, the professionals that run these classes, and I hope that you guys will do right by our students tonight and vote yes.
Thank you, Mrs. Wolfinger. I did have one question regarding that. Is this incident with the flex and the band, is that just an isolated incident, or is that kind of the new normal based on the schedules?
I think Mrs. Luffy would be best able to answer that.
So in previous years, when Mr. Mag was down at the elementary level, like we would have flex covered by another teacher. Yes. So it's not something new that we haven't done in the last 7 years. We have covered band in that capacity.
Thank you. So our student representatives are not here this evening. They had soccer games, so we will forgive them.
I've been told they won't miss many.
There is no career tech report this evening. Facilities committee.
Facilities met, since we've been meeting a little bit closer together, more times a month. It's not that much to talk about, but Daryl came and gave us some update. He just wanted a recommendation from the committee to sell old equipment, and I'm not even sure what all it's sale. The committee does recommend that he'd be given that approval. He did bring some information about solar, looking at solar panels and solar electric. That's going to be a long-term type of a look and potential possible grants. So Daryl's looking at it. Topsoil pile continues to be a sore spot, and it seems to have gotten, instead of being something simple to just move from one point to another, it's gotten tied up with engineers and questions, and it's the reason toilet seats cost $5,000 in government. But that's ongoing. That'll be taken care of. The business administration office was there. Joanne was there, and still struggling to get information satisfactory to the needs of the business office. There was a question that came up since the stadium costs came in less. Part of the payment to some of our professionals were based on a percentage, so the question was posed, since 5.6 versus 3.4, do the professionals get paid less? So that's kind of being looked at. We don't have an answer on that. Still some questions on some of our professionals with EI, our architects, we don't have answers for yet. Our soft costs seem to be larger than what they should be, and we don't necessarily have a great understanding of what that actually is. Good news is most of the projects in general seem to be on target from a financial standpoint, short of the soft costs. In the facilities meeting, we did talk about pursuing prices on lights. So that is in process, so that once we know what we need to have, we should be able to do that fairly quick. That's it.
Thank you.
Mr. Null, real quick, and this is just for my own peace of mind. Can you give us an update on, like, everybody sees what's out there now, but like bleacher timelines and scoreboard, what those estimated?
Remember when he said about the bleachers?
I believe the bleachers are going to be delivered September 24th and installed by October 14th.
Yeah. And then the sound system, that'll come right near the tail end after we get our pole. They talked about putting speakers on light standards off the back of the stands. That was changed. It is still going to be that elevator, or the pole to elevate the sound system.
Let me revise that. I think the scoreboard's coming the 27th and will be installed over that time. The bleachers are going to come, I think, early October, and then they have a 45-day install. So it's going to be closer to that December time.
Thank you.
Field looks cool.
I have a question. The bleachers, can I get a diagram or see what they look like? Can we see what the bleachers are going to look like? I know it's.
I mean, I don't know that we have a 3D rendering of that, Mr. Scott. I mean, they're on the plans that we have. I mean, you've seen those. I mean,
because I just went through a nightmare on Friday down Waynesboro. As visitors, we sat on the ground. We couldn't see the people in the first two rows. Couldn't see the game because the players are in the way. So I'd like to know what the bleachers going to be. Would the bleachers be high enough that people could see over the players?
well, I mean, there's close to.
We have a set of prints that we can pull out and you can look at.
Would you please? I'd appreciate that.
They're in my pickup.
Dr. Donette, curriculum report.
Good evening, all. Last time we were here, Mrs. Eberly had requested some research on the grading scales, so I'm here to present that in a few seconds once it's pulled up. So what I did with this report is I went through and looked at all of the student handbooks for districts that are in South Central Pennsylvania. So I looked at the capital area IU, I looked at Franklin County, and what we looked at. So the current grading scale for Shippensburg School District for the middle and high school is a 92 to 100 is an A. And you can see the breakdown between the A minuses and the pluses and all that good stuff on the screen. If you go to the next slide, what you're going to see, other districts using that same scale. There's two other districts that use that same scale. It's Upper Adams and Gettysburg. And then the next slide. I shouldn't say most, the 9 districts near us use a 93 to 100% for an A, and those districts are listed. And then the next slide shows you that districts that use a 90 to 100 being an A, there's 13 of those, and those are all listed. The tendency is more rural schools use 90 to 100, which is interesting because we do have some outliers in there with Stilton High Spire and Harrisburg being on that list. But when we look across the state, that is the tendency. So there's really no hard and fast rule or recommendations regarding what a grading scale should be. I can tell you when students are looking at institutions of higher education, the admissions counselors translate these into a 4.0 grade scale, and they have different algorithms that they use to try to balance the rigor of different high schools in their admissions process. But really it is kind of all over the board. Does that answer the question that you wanted?
It does. I would like to see us getting back to that 90 to 100 scale. It's something that we implemented here before, and speaking with our educators, would like to get back to that 90 to 100. I think that it would also help with our career tech. I mean, the joint operating committee, all of the schools that participate there go by the 90 to 100. So we're kind of the redheaded stepchild with our grading scale. So I would like for us to, get back to this. I know even, being a Shippensburg University student, we're also on a 90 to 100 grading scale.
Yeah, we looked at the handbook for Cumberland County, for Franklin County VOTEC, and in their handbook it says that they use the grading scale of the home institution. So if the home institution is doing a 92 to 100 or 93 to 100, that's how they're bringing those grades back to that district. I'll have to look and see what all districts are feeding into that VOTEC school though.
Speaking with Mr. Lindenmuth, there are some cons with our 90 to 100 because it does impact how some of our students are able to get into the career tech based on the GPA. I don't know what it would take for us to change our grading scale. Clearly that would be, a vote, but I would definitely like to.
It would be a handbook issue. We would just get it in a handbook.
So you're a really smart educator. You have a PhD. Can you explain why is there some pedagogical, I'm using all the smarty pants words here.
What?
Is there some, what is the justification for doing, as a parent who's had so many children go through this high school and middle school, I've never understood it. And so is there, what are the pros?
It truly is an artifact from 100 years ago that districts decided 93 to 100%. And there's been a lot of drift and a lot of conversations over the past couple of years about this as districts shift their grading scale. Additionally, some districts are now moving away from grading scales entirely and moving toward competency-based grading, where it is either you can do the standard or you can't. And it's kind of pass-fail, or they'll use a rubric, a 4-point rubric, which is comparable to some of the ways elementary schools tend to grade.
So I expected you to say something about grade inflation or something like that, but grade
inflation, there is evidence that grade inflation exists, and changing your grading scale tends to not help with grade inflation. Grade inflation tends to be caused by a multitude of factors, including the view of education going from a public good to a commodity.
And colleges adjust their, it doesn't impact our students when they go to college. The colleges level the playing field based on individual grading scales and credits and offerings.
It just seems messy.
It is. It is.
So I hate to even ask to bring up the topic of handbooks and having this discussion again, but can we get this on the next agenda to change this?
I think maybe we want to do some exploration of what we can do in the computer system. That's not a no. It's
Mrs. Luffy, I see you're raising your
want to
hand.
come forward?
Actually, I believe maybe it was from the request from you or Mr. August this summer that he had indicated that a study for the grading scale, he would like to have that done. So I'm actually developing a committee. I have a committee. I just sent them an email earlier this week to discuss when we're going to meet and discuss this a little bit more in detail as to what really we're grading, how we're grading. So if you think about a quick 10-point quiz, if you get a 9 out of 10, you're already down to a B. And is that really indicating mastery? So there's a little bit more conversation that we would like to have. Not that we're opposed to it. I think there are some people who very much think that just missing 1 point doesn't necessarily mean that it's a B work. It could mean an A work. So what does that mean in our practices, and having conversations about what we're really grading and why we're grading and how we're assessing in that manner.
So we're open to the conversation. I'm not sure we'll have it by the next board meeting.
I'm just happy for some dialogue on this topic because it's something I've wanted for like 2 years now. So I'm just happy to have these conversations.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem like kind of thing you want to do in the middle of a school year.
Correct.
So like maybe for the next handbook.
Right.
Yeah, and I would say that, you know, the scale is one thing, and teachers adjust to scales, kids adjust to scales. It's really about the philosophy of grading and what's equity in grading and what's valuable in grading, which is a larger discussion. So that discussion should drive out what our scale should be. But we need to have that first.
So I have two things. One, on the presentation, I saw an 80 is a C, and as someone who may or may not have skated by with a lot of 80s, that hurts my feelings some. But the second thing, though, is you talked about VOTEC and the home, using the home district. So I just sat here and I thought, if just whatever class it is, they have 3 10-point quizzes. A kid from Shippensburg gets 9 out of 10 on every one. A kid that is from one of those that uses 90 gets the same exact questions. Our kid gets a B, the other kid gets an A for the same exact work. So I want our kids to be go-getters and overachievers and all of that, but I do understand the talking point as to why.
Yeah, I think the movement was to deal with grade inflation, you know, to move and adjust these up. You know, I think that's at least my recollection, was to raise standards. You change the scale and make kids work harder to get those A's. At least that was the thinking. Thank you, Mrs. Levy.
Superintendent's report.
Thank you. Going to talk about the enrollment. It is attached. Our kindergarten, I will point out, is 230, which is different from all of our other class sizes. I shared some information with the board in my update on that. You'll notice the bubble in first, second, and third grade. We're currently experiencing, that's our bubble group. We have 1,141 students in our K-3 programs across 3 buildings. At SACE, we are at 549 students. Secondary, 872. I'm sorry, the middle school, 872. And 9 through 12, 1,101 students with 22 in different placements for a grand total of 3685. Slightly below, our high water mark last year, but would point out to the board that bubble is coming through, and it's important to pay attention to the number of teachers per grade level per building. That high spot is in third grade at Grayson, where we are experiencing high class sizes there. That's really a function of having 5 teachers there as opposed to the 6 that we added this year at Byrd, because as you can see from those numbers, that situation would have been worse. And we also added a second grade teacher at Nancy Grayson to deal with that bubble. Moving forward, the board will have to make decisions, and administratively as well, to make recommendations of how to deal with the bubble as it enters SACE, where there are, as you can see, 10 teachers per grade level. So
August, did you, for the public, did you go over the cyber?
Oh, I'm sorry. That's new. Cyber charter totals: 79 elementary, 69 middle, and 99 in the high school, for a total of 247. Our Kaola students, this is our cyber, 7 at the elementary, 17 at the middle school, and 142 at the high school. Just a little note on that one, that's not full-time enrollments, that's kids who are picking up different classes, so that number goes up. A student may be, taking classes with us and taking a Kaola class as well, for 166 total.
The cyber charter, has it increased?
It has. We had 44 increase this year. Per my update, I broke down those numbers, I believe. 11 were kindergartners, 8 of whom had already siblings in outside charters. So it was really 3 kindergarten students, so it has gone up. We had about 19 leave, or either leave us or leave or come back. We had about 18 of our students we currently have go to cyber. So if you take that 18 and along with the 11 kindergartners, that's where that number increases. Just a reminder that the other 40 of the 44 were homeschool students who went from homeschool status to cyber, and then the other numbers were move-ins, kids who have already been in cyber but have moved into our district that we now get to pay for. So,
Christy, this will put you on the spot, but the cost difference in outside cyber charter to Keola is roughly.
Oh, I'm gonna have to look at Dr. Jonat. Do you know about how much if a child takes full time? How much is Keola? 6,000. I hate to.
It's substantially cheaper than outside cyber charter.
Compared to
That was
maybe
my point,
12,000. Yeah.
This may be too big a question for this board meeting, but the bubble, or the pig and the python, whatever you want to call it, is I assume that you will be looking or bringing us recommendations or ways, because this is not, yes, it's an elementary issue, but by next year this will be a SACE issue.
Correct, and I've been in communication and working with EI for free on our enrollment projections and what the facility needs might be. To not to spoil the headline, their recommendation, which I think is grounded in pretty much reality from our projections, is for us to be between 12 and 14 teachers per grade level. So
do we have space for that at SACE?
So SACE is not an issue. Well, they would argue maybe differently, but we have space at SACE to house classes there. And as this group comes up, we are going to have to address that, with a position or an internal transfer. The difficulty is, the elementaries are pretty booked as they are. So it's not like we can, move. We have a lot of flexibility to move teachers between grade levels. That's the only way to solve the issue, is to transfer from a lower grade or hire, an additional position.
But the new spaces at SACE are not ideal. Is that?
I think they're large enough. I would say they're serviceable. I've walked them with Mrs. Mallory.
Okay.
There's 4 available, which is convenient. If we wanted to get to 12 at each grade level, and as of course you go up in age, you can have a few more kids in class. It is more important to have smaller numbers. As kids are learning how to go to school.
But anyway, it won't be too many years before that bubble hits the middle school, and I just want to be sure we're thinking ahead and trying to figure this out.
Correct. So we've done a lot of work at the middle school to get to 12 teachers per grade level.
Because we had a little bubble. Looks like we have a little bubble in 7th grade.
Right. So I mean, that average class size of 25 is not outside of regular operating procedures for districts. I mean, it's not insane. It is when you get, at the elementary level, when you get into those 27, 28, 29 range, that you have to be concerned. If we don't do anything at SACE, when that 310, which is the top end of the bubble, hits, I mean, that's theoretically 31 students per class. So not something I'm sure the board is interested in having. So we have to make some adjustments. And I would just say, that's the priority moving forward for me, and my recommendation is that we take care of our positions to deal with our class sizes in this bubble, to get us prepared for where we're going to be with our projections for enrollment.
As a total, Bill, did you get a chance to look at the Power School versus what we have in total?
So the comparison is definitely off for kindergarten. Which they predicted 2 to 5% increase over the next 4 years, which is about as far out as we can see with projections of construction of new housing. So definitely a surprise at kindergarten this year. I will say in my meeting with Cumberland Franklin County superintendents today, they all seem to indicate that the kindergarten class, their kindergarten numbers were lower as well, lower than expected. I don't have an answer for why that is, but yeah.
So it could be a fluke.
It definitely could be a fluke, and that's the tough part with kindergarten is you don't necessarily want to. You don't know what your numbers really are until the first week of school, and they still trickle in from there. We're feeling pretty confident that that's the number we have. Even if you take all 11 of those kindergartners that went to outside charter, we'd still be at 241, which is 60 students less than our bubble, and about 30 students less than what we typically get, 35. 30 to 35 less than what we typically see. But to answer your question, definitely, the administration is strategizing how best to deal with that. And the next budget we will need to be looking at, likely adding positions. We will try to be as efficient as possible in that ask.
Thanks.
That concludes. Thank you.
Consent agenda. Item 4A, we recommend the approval of the minutes as presented and attached from the August 26th board meeting. 4B is the finance reports, which are attached. Item 4C is the request to form a new activity, the Tri-M Music Honor Society. Jennifer Deibler, music teachers requesting to form a music honor society. Through performance and community service, students develop confidence, creativity, critical thinking, compassion, and a host of other leadership skills which will serve them in school and beyond. 4D is curriculum, Art 2, Art 3, Art 4, Art 5, chemistry in the physical world, climate and weather, and earth science. 4E is personnel, and there are a number of resignations, promotions, appointments, and is there a motion to approve items 4A through 4E?
We're just gonna make a motion to approve.
Motion made by Mr. Scott, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Kressler. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 4F, administrative staff, motion to approve Caleb Barwin as business administrator at Shippensburg Area School District with a start date to be determined, and such approval as business administrator conditional upon a contract being approved with all terms and conditions within 90 days of said motion. Is there a motion to approve item 4F?
So moved.
Motion made by Dr. Lyman, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Carey. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The action agenda, item 5A, the Boys and Girls Wrestling Co-op. Shalom Christian Academy has requested to co-op with Shippensburg Area Senior High School for boys and girls wrestling starting this academic year. The wrestling co-op would be at no cost to the district and could be terminated at any point after the first year. Is there a motion to approve item 5A?
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Bard, second.
It's got seconds.
Second by Mr. Scott. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 5B, the Sam's field trip to the Volvo Customer Center. The middle school is requesting permission to take students to Volvo Customer Center on September 16th from 11 to 2 p.m. to work with drones. Students will have the opportunity to see the setup, program, etc. at the Pixie Drone event. There is no cost for this field trip. Is there a motion to approve item 5B?
Let's go make a motion to approve.
Motion made by Mr. Scott, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Carey. Discussion.
Just a comment, this is like perfect field trip. It's taking advantage of a great resource that literally is in our backyard, free to us. It's always great and a great experience for kids. So
Yeah, super exciting to get our kids, interacting with drone technology.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5C, revised 2024-2025 meal price for adult breakfast. At the May 28th Planning and Action Meeting, the Board of Directors approved the attached food service meal prices. The district was notified that the adult breakfast prices needed to be increased to comply with the federal regulations. Administration recommends a revision to the price from $2.75 to $2.85. Is there a motion to approve item 5C?
So moved.
Motion by Dr. Lyman, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Carey. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 5D is the revised job description for the virtual education academic advisor / special education teacher. Administration recommends approval to the revisions made to the job description for the virtual education academic advisor / special education teacher position. Is there a motion to approve item 5D?
Red Scott make a motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Scott, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Carey. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 5E, administration recommends approval to the revisions made to the job description for the business administrator position. The job description is attached. Is there a motion to approve item 5E?
Red Scott make a motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Scott, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Donovan. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Jim Bard.
Yes.
Mr. Mike Carey.
No.
Mr. Levi Kressler.
yes.
Dr. Michael Lyman.
Yes.
Mr. Kurt Noggle.
No.
Mr. Fred Scott.
Yes.
Mr. Darren Donovan.
Yes.
Mrs. Steph Everly.
Yes.
Motion carried. 6 yes, 2 no.
Item 5SF is the Cumberland Perry, the MHIDD Letter of Agreement. Cumberland Valley Mental Health, Intellectual, and Developmental Disabilities offers the Child and Adolescent Service System Program, an elementary school-based service to assist families in assessing mental health and other supportive services to meet the needs of their elementary-aged children in Cumberland and Perry counties at no cost. Is there a motion to approve item 5F?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Carey, second.
Second.
Second by Dr. Lyman. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 5G is the Laurel Life 23-24 SOAR contract. Administration recommends retro approval of the attached contract between Shippensburg Area School District and Folium. Laurel Life provides special services to students with education, therapeutic, and behavioral needs and requirement. The cost of this program was $310,000 for the SOAR program and $42,000 to rent at the Browns Mill School from July 23rd to June 2024. Is there a motion to approve item 5G?
Red Scott make a motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Scott, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Kressler. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The Shippensburg, so the Laurel Life 24-25 SOAR contract, administration recommends approval of the same contract with Laurel Life for the cost of $325,500 and the $44,100 to rent the Browns Mill School. Is there a motion to approve item 5H?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Donovan, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Carey. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 5 is the quote for News ELA Social Studies and 1 PD session for grades 6 through 8. Administration recommends purchase of News ELA Social Studies and 1 PD session for grades 6 through 8. The cost is $9,999 and will come from the designated fund balance for curriculum. Is there a motion to approve item 5I?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Donovan, second.
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 Second by Dr. Lyman. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5J, administration recommends retro approval of the following McGraw-Hill teaching resources and curriculum. The cost for this would be $40,992.34 and will be paid from the fund balance for special education. It's reading mastery, corrective reading, number worlds, teen health, and reading success. Is there a motion to approve item 5J?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Donovan, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Carey. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5K is the Vista School Extended School Year Education Services Addendum. During the 23-24 school year, one student who attends the Vista School requires extended school year services. The services extend from July 8th, 2024 to August 9th, 2024, and the term for that student was $9,203.46. Is there a motion to approve item 5K?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Donovan, second.
Discuss seconds.
Second by Mr. Scott. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5L is the agreement with the Vista School for Special Education Services. As outlined in each student's IEP, the Vista School provides education services and supports to students with intensive needs related to autism spectrum disorder. The proposed agreement is for the 24-25 school year, and the admission is an approval private school 4,010 funded slot. This means that pending approval, the tuition will either fully or partially be funded by the state. Is there a motion to approve item 5L?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Donovan, second.
Second.
Discussion, second by Mr. Carey. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5M is the Hoffman Homes Agreement. Administration recommends approval of the attached Hoffman Homes Incorporated Agreement. Hoffman provides a therapeutic learning environment and educational services to children with and without special education requirements. The cost for program services are $150 per instructional day while school is in session. Is there a motion to approve item 5M?
So moved.
Motion by Dr. Lyman, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Carey. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5N is Diacon Child, Family and Community Ministries doing business as Diacon Youth Services Education Service Contract for fiscal year 24-25. Diacon Youth Services provides a range of programs for at-risk youths, primarily serving individuals referred by county juvenile probation departments and children and youth services. Diacon has entered into partnership with the CAIU to provide services upon request directly to school districts, and that cost is $178.06 a day. Is there a motion to approve item 5N?
Red Scott, make a motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Scott, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Bard. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 5O is full-time personal care assistant. Administration recommends the addition of a full-time personal care assistant. The recommendation for this position is a result of a student who recently registered in the district with this level of service included in their IEP. Is there a motion to approve item 5O?
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Bard, second.
Second.
Second by Dr. Lyman. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 5P is the Rashini Employer Reporting Engagement Proposal for the 2024 year. Administration recommends approval of the proposal from the Rashini Group to complete the Affordable Care Act mandating reporting requirements. The cost for these services will be $6.50 per 1095 form. Is there a motion to approve item 5P?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Carey, second.
Ms. Scott, second.
Second by Mr. Scott. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 5Q is the resolution not to raise taxes above the index for the 25-26 budget. Normally, each year, the Board of Directors is required to approve one of two options for developing an annual budget. One, adopt a budget resolution not to exceed the Act 1 index, in which the millage rate for real estate taxes cannot exceed the established adjusted Act 1 index rate for Shippensburg School District. And two, submit a preliminary budget and apply for referendum exceptions to raise real estate taxes above the adjusted Act 1 index. Final decision to utilize referendum exceptions must be made with the approval of the final budget adoption. However, should school districts accept the 24-25 state budget adequacy supplement funds, districts are not permitted to raise taxes above the Act 1 index. Is there a motion to approve item 5Q?
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Bard, second.
Ms. Scott, second. Go ahead. Give it-
Second by Mr. Carey. Discussion?
Just real quick, I know that our index is on now, should be on the decline if my memory serves correct. Does anybody remember what that number it might be?
I don't think they released the adjusted Act 1 index yet. I think if I'm remembering from the timeline, I think it's closer to the end of September.
Okay.
So the state will release that information.
That's fine.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5R is the traffic evaluation proposal. Administration recommends approval of the attached traffic evaluation proposal from K&W Engineering at the cost of $11,890 to come from the assigned fund balance for future capital projects. The traffic evaluation is a requirement from the Shippensburg Borough in order to move forward with potential projects at the new athletic stadium. Is there a motion to approve item 5R?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Noggle, second.
Second.
Second by Dr. Lyman. Discussion?
Yeah, I'm voting for this, but I don't see the necessity of this. But I'll vote for it.
Right.
I want to say something real quick. So, according to the contract here, it's probably not a big deal, but just want to point it out. The traffic evaluation, there's 10 different steps here. First one is saying coordination with the Shippensburg Area School District and the borough engineer to determine the scope of the traffic study for the project. Can anybody verify if that has actually been done or not?
I don't believe so because we haven't approved the contract yet. So once the contract's approved, TDP will reach out to the borough.
And then just secondly, number 3 on here, it's saying that they were to conduct one field visit during a football game on August 30th versus Hershey to observe traffic patterns and parking areas selected for analysis and confirm that the proposed scope adequately captures the football game's parking demand. And as far as I'm aware, that did not occur, so I don't know if that needs to change in the contract or if another game needs supplemented in for that spot.
Yeah, I talked to the gentleman, or I didn't talk, I had a message from him. They're planning on doing it in September.
All right.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5S is the PASBO District Operations Review. Per the request of board members, the attached proposal is for PASBO to conduct.
Wait, I'm sorry. My bad.
Sorry. So per the request of board members, the attached proposal is for PASBO to conduct a review of the Shippensburg Area School District operations to help determine the capacity for efficiencies, improvements, staffing levels. The quote is to view the business office, human resources, transportation, and technology operations at a combined cost of $27,000, and that is attached. Is there a motion to approve item 5S?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Noggle, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Carey. Discussion?
I'm still of the opinion that I'd like to see this done after we get a new business administrator, but that's my opinion. I just not sure I'm against it. I just would like to see it done when we have.
Do you know what the timeline would be? When this.
So, I mean, we've been in discussions with them for a while, so I think they're just waiting on the contract. I can't imagine it's going to be weeks. I say that not really knowing what their timeline is, so I can try to find out when that timeline is.
And were we provided examples of their work as far as the outcomes?
So they weren't able to provide us the samples because they're proprietary to those districts. They did give us a number of references. We reached out to those references, and they, who received those reports, and they all said they were worthwhile.
I sort of agree with Mike about maybe we should do it after we hired the new administrator, so he can have some input and they can tell him and guide him.
It may be a default, Mr. Scott, because when Mrs. Lentz leaves, there's probably going to be a gap where we're trying to fill, and they may say it makes more sense to wait until that person comes in. I haven't spoken to them about that, but I will dialogue with them on what they think is the best way forward.
Yeah, I just wouldn't want to see us go forward with this and then evaluate a business office that maybe has someone who's, maybe temporarily in place while we're transitioning. That wouldn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think my sense is they'll do interviews, and we can, if we get it approved fast enough, they can maybe interview Mrs. Lentz before she leaves and interview the new person as well. I mean, I think it's a day or two process for them to come in. They come in with a team. They conduct a lot of interviews, a lot of evaluations of processes in those two or 3 days. So it may be possible we could do it, here and then. I'm not sure.
Just one more question. What fund is this coming out of?
The general fund.
It would have to be, I'm assuming, a general fund expense.
Fund balance.
I mean, to me, based on what you just said, the ideal thing would be for this to involve both Christy and the new person, if that's possible.
Agreed, and understand we're getting the bonus package, so
right.
They could maybe start with another department if that made sense, because they'll conduct in the same kind of process, with transportation, HR and technology, so perhaps the timing of that can be used to our advantage as well.
Is that just something you can communicate to them, that it's sort of the will of the board? I mean, it's the will of me. I don't know. I don't want to speak to the rest of the board, but that we'd like both the outgoing and the incoming.
Absolutely, we can talk about our unique situation. I believe that might have already been.
Okay, and we don't need like an extra motion or anything with that?
I don't think so. I mean, that's just part of an approved contract. We can certainly collaborate on when it makes sense to do that.
I mean, if that's what other people, that sounds like the best case scenario to me, because then we get the best of both worlds.
Right.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 5T, the additional part-time music teacher position. Per the request of the board, approval of the hiring of a .5 music teacher. The approximate cost of this position is $51,387. Is there a motion to approve item 5T?
Rich Scott, make a motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Scott, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Bard. Discussion?
Yeah, I think this is better than nothing. It sounds to me from what I'm hearing, and we need a full teacher instead of a half a teacher, but half is better than none. But from the emails and stuff that I received, and I think it sounds to me like we need a full teacher, but that's just my opinion.
For me, we just went through a whole list of things for mental health for students in the school district. I'm not a music person, but I know people in the music band, that's part of their life. They enjoy that. They want to be part of that. So I think it's a necessity. If it's part-time, start out, but we look to the future for full-time.
I agree. I know years ago, like diving through some of the history of the music program back, I think it was 2013 when a lot of those cuts were done, is when we went from the 8.5 to the 7 when there were retirements and they weren't placed. I agree that this is not maybe fixing the cost, knowing that some of those, the teachers are losing a half a day of instruction per cycle, larger lesson sizes with shortened lesson times. I don't know that that situation is ideal for engagement and well-being. I'll 100% support a half person, but I would like this to be remembered in our budget next year when we are indeed making some of those recommendations for teachers. I know the needs are great and our resources are limited, but I think that that's one of those things when we talk about goals, also having strong music programs, extracurriculars to support our strong academics and athletics.
Well, just so you know, though, we did cut 2 middle school positions earlier, math and elementary teacher, and they need elementary as well, so just trying to be fair across the board.
I despise this conversation. I understand absolutely both sides of the argument. I go back to, and he just touched on it, we have so many needs, we don't have enough ways to fill every need. And then I look at timing, and I think we went through our budget, not everything made the cut, including this position was something. And I know that we have some substantial things coming up in the next couple months. Example, a transportation contract that's going out to bid, and school SRO program that's floating around as to what's going on. And I think I'm allowed to say it, the CBA agreement is starting in January with some talks. And I know this isn't perfect in the current setup, and some people will absolutely tell me that it's not perfect at all. Others will say that it is manageable and has fit contractual requirements and such things. So I hate it. And Fred said that the kids find a home. I absolutely understand that kids find a home in the band. And just like the FFA, when the FFA wanted a position a few years back, when I first got on the board, I remember receiving emails and everything, and that position didn't get added, like in that case in January. It was added in that next budget cycle. So that's my spiel.
I would echo. I know it's what Levi has said. I love music. I think my kids were in music. I think it's great, and I know that the science shows that it really benefits kids. I think the administration worked really hard to come up with a solution that was imperfect, but it was the best we could do with our limited resources. I think my main concern is that there's a precedent here. We have a process for adding positions, and it is the budget process. And to try to add a position in the middle of a school year that means we're paying for it out of fund balance. It's not budgeted. It just doesn't seem fiscally wise, and it seems a little rushed. That being said, I would echo what Ms. Eberly said, and this needs to be part of the discussion as we go through the budget process, so that we make sure that we are meeting the needs in the future.
Again, like I do not like adding positions mid-year, but also looking at it from, people culture and looking out for the well-being and of the educators and the sustainability of that current schedule. I don't know that if an individual can keep going from 3 buildings every single day and to keep up that same rigorous schedule. I know how it is when we're flying around from meeting to meeting and you get in there and you're frantic and you kind of just need a minute to gather. They don't have that time to kind of decompress, and I think that, you know, while they don't or want to show that that impacts the quality of what they're giving to their students, it does indeed at the end of the day. I don't believe that they are able to do their best when they are going from 3 different buildings. I don't believe that it's sustainable. The schedule is the best with what we had because we didn't have even an extra half of a person, because, you know, we were already about to approve a budget. So again, to bring this request, it was either going to come in at the very tail end of the budget or after. I mean, I don't want this to be a normal occurrence of, you know, approving positions mid-year, but I think that ultimately, if it's going to also help educators and their well-being and their engagement so that they can be the best person that they can be for our students, then I'm willing to, you know, make an accommodation for this item.
So 2 things real quick. The example that was given earlier, I think it was Mrs. Wolfinger, during the flex time where the students, they were sitting for like 40 minutes or so with nothing to do, is that an everyday occurrence, or what? Do these kids have something to do? Like, can they have the option to join another club, or we're not just sitting these kids in a room every day?
Ms. Lovey, are you able to speak to that? And maybe also the not being able to get to instruments and things like that?
So Flex occurs, Flex 1 occurs on Mondays, Flex 2 is Tuesday, Flex 3 is Wednesday, et cetera, and it's according to our block schedule. So when they have block 1 on Monday in the morning with Mr. Fike, then that, you know, usually on a Monday, now last week we didn't have Monday, so it was on a Friday. But anyway, we have a teacher cover that class, just like we have other teachers who are club advisors covering classes, et cetera. So it's very normal for other teachers to cover other classes when they are not in the classroom, because either they are running a club or they're doing something extra. The teacher that actually was there on Friday, I did quickly email her to say, like, did you tell kids not to, you know, play instruments during Flex? She had actually requested me to change her coverage because the kids were playing drums and playing instruments, and she even recalled that a student asked to play an instrument or trumpet, and she said, yes, you could play it. So, you know, I also then asked, were there lesson plans left or something for her to follow, which is our typical protocol. And unfortunately, she did not have anything. It took her a while to find something that the students could do. So, I mean, that's a very typical response for teachers to cover other classes during Flex. It's a club period. We want students to be involved in clubs and activities. We just had new clubs added tonight. Like, I mean, that's what our students are to be doing during Flex.
Are they able to get their instruments out of the cage if Mr. Fike is at?
So, I mean, we have been locking the doors as part of some of our making sure that the doors of classrooms that are not being utilized are locked as part of our school safety. So that door probably has been locked more often than it has been in the past. So if it is a concern, I mean, we can make sure we have somebody down there, just like we were going to have somebody at the back gate at dismissal. We can make sure that somebody's at that door to unlock it at dismissal time so kids can get their instruments out. Yes. This is the first I've heard of that. I was not aware of that concern. So we can.
I mean, the full intention is for kids to be able to get their instruments during this Flex period.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any additional discussion?
Quick question, a technical question. If we were to end up in a four-way tie tonight, how is that handled? Or should this be?
It wouldn't pass. You need
pass?
Yeah, 4-4. Am I correct?
Fails.
Motion would fail.
I believe so.
You need a majority of the members present.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Mike Carey,
No.
Mr. Levi Kressler,
No.
Dr. Michael Lyman,
No.
Mr. Kurt Noggle,
Yes.
Mr. Fred Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Jim Bard,
Yes.
Mr. Darren Donovan,
No.
Mrs. Steph Eberly.
Yes.
3 yes, 5 no, motion failed. Oh, wait, sorry. Oh, sorry, miscounted. Yep. 4 and 4, sorry, motion failed.
5U, approval of an aquatic instructor and aquatic aide. Per request of the board, the approval of the hiring of an aquatics instructor and an aide position to support swimming instruction. The full teaching position has an estimated cost of $102,775 and the aide position with an estimated cost of $56,516. With creation of an aquatics program, there will be an additional transportation cost of approximately $24,000 to $30,000 in order to support elementary swimming lessons. Is there a motion to approve item 5U?
Fred Scott make a motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Scott, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Bard. Discussion?
Yeah. Back probably a year ago when we sent 5 or 6, 7 ROTC guys, this was taken out, the swimming lessons. And if I recall, I asked about getting it back in, and we talked about that. But apparently it did not make it this time. But we're willing to send 6 students, I think it's 6, to the ROTC versus how many elementary students that would benefit from something like this. And if I remember correctly, Mr. August, you told me the cost was offset about equal.
So just to make sure we're talking about the same thing, we were spending $20,000 to get grades 4 and 5 to less than 1 hour sessions of water safety training. And so, in talking with the building principal, looking to cut where we could or shift to different programs, that's when that was removed. If we're going to do swimming, my recommendation is that we do it right, and this is the way to do it right. Through the budget process, as we prioritize things within that budget, that by the first pass was a $3.5 million deficit. We had other priorities, so it's back on the agenda for the board to consider. At that, I want to make sure the board is aware of the cost associated with this program.
But do you remember what the cost of what we sent them kids to Shippensburg in with the ROT? It was like,
Was it like 30,000? The
Where was
ROTC, the ROTC, I thought it was like around 30,000.
So depending on the number of kids we send and the transportation costs, we're still compiling that information. So we did move this pile of money over to that expense to cover that, yes.
But it was 6 kids, if I remember correctly.
I think there's less than that, correct? Yeah, we're sending 2, I believe, right?
So there's 2 kids.
Right, for the first year of the program. So it is going to be less money than the $20,000 that we would be spending on that. We had been spending.
So, I mean, I would like to approve this with kind of the stipulation that this would be implemented next year so that we could plan and get the jobs posted for this position, ensuring that, we have the proper curriculum, the right program, but just to plan, because if we want this to be successful and to be robust, to approve it, but not actually implement it until the next school year.
I would also stress, the ideal candidate for this would probably also have a PE certification that then could teach PE classes at the high school as well. Yeah, I just throw that out as a.
Which is what I think it was 10 years ago.
Right.
So do we have someone like that now?
I mean, we need to get it approved and go through an interview process.
So, Ms. Eberly, if I understand you, you would like to approve this as basically a budget recommendation to be implemented next year.
Correct. We could plan, make good decisions with, again, when I talk about our goals that we want, like I know that this is a goal of Mr. Scott. I would love to see this program back at a K through 12 level. So I think that we could, to approve it, start planning for it, the logistics of transportation, because we know, transportation is going to be a little bit of a struggle possibly. So if we could just kind of approve it, but the stipulation that it would be next year that it would be implemented.
I believe we would need a motion to modify the item.
Well, it doesn't state that it's for this year.
It might clarify it though.
Just a question. I support the idea of this, but I also look at the grand picture budget. We just saw where we were probably looking at maybe hiring minimum 4 elementary teachers to deal with intermediate school, at least 2, I guess.
I don't want to commit to any numbers, but definitely, we will have elementary positions to add to the budget next year.
I look at this, if we do what you said now, I feel like that's like putting that in, then I feel like we should probably just, theoretically, if we take that plan of action, we should be like, oh, well, we probably need 2 elementary teachers, let's just go ahead and recommend we do that. And I don't know that that's the game I want to get into.
So I think to sort of echo what Mr. Kussler's saying, if I were to prioritize some of the needs in the district, that bubble coming through our elementary and intermediate schools seems to be a pretty high priority to me. And it is probably a higher priority for me than swimming. Although I think swimming's great, and I really understand Mr. Scott's passion for this because of what he's experienced in his life. But if we have to make tough decisions, and my priority would be some of those middle school, or those intermediate and elementary school, that bubble.
I think it's not just the swimming, it's also a life skill that results in death.
Don't disagree. Yeah.
If that's the case, I mean, there's a whole lot of positions I voted for I probably shouldn't have voted for. I should have said teacher's position, I should have said don't fill. If that's the criteria we're going to use about here, what's going to be or what should be or can be. I voted to take care of what I'm going to take care of, and we don't know what the future will bring. Everybody looking at the downside. Beginning of the year, before the budget was 3 million, what, deficit, 3.4 million deficit. Budget comes along, I'm looking at all these teacher positions being filled. Now, is the deficit still 3.4 million or is it 1.2 million?
I believe last time we talked it was 2.2.
It's down too much, so it's lower.
Because of additional state monies added through things like that grant we talked about, Mr. Scott.
So there's not
temporarily switching, hopefully, those positions onto temporary money, but still holding the budget item. You know, those in the budget.
Chrissy, have we finished out the year, our full everything?
No, so we're going through the audit now. Maybe by the end of this week I might have a temporary, if I needed to give a number where we think we'll end, but usually we don't know until end of September, beginning of October.
So we could possibly be lower than what we're saying right now, right, after the budget's over.
Well, it wouldn't be for budget, it would be how we ended this past fiscal year.
The money we don't spend goes back into...
It would roll into fund balance.
Back into fund balance. That's what I'm saying. Like I said, there's a passion for me. I've seen with kids, and we read about it every day, of people drowning because they don't know how to swim. So I'm just one vote. Vote where you want. I know how I'm voting.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, are we Are we deciding on this as a thing for this year, or are we going to work on this for next year?
Ultimately, next year, even after speaking with Mrs. Johnson, that she would definitely support even, next year, but to properly plan and vet what this is going to look like as a robust program. But, approving it would also kind of give her some freedom to what this program would look like moving forward.
So I think we should probably amend the agenda item to reflect that language.
One of
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm going to go out on a limb. I would like to amend this motion to basically say that we as a board are saying this is a budget priority for us for the next fiscal year. And to add to that, at least a half-time and maybe a full-time additional music position.
I will second that.
So the last part of the halftime, or
Is it
one or the other?
Well, at least half, and I'll go for both. We'll go for full-time. And I know it's just words, but that's the process we have to go through.
So in the way we traditionally would handle this is, I believe building level administrators make their staffing request lists, and then those things get, everybody has all kinds of wants and needs, and then everybody loses a little bit each time. So are we, by doing this, saying that no matter what anybody else requests, that this one can't get cut from that staffing list? I'm just throwing that out there, because again, this is uncharted waters as to what we typically do not do. Which I would just imagine from a business manager's perspective, it's probably not typical. I can't remember ever doing this. Same as the last position, and I hate it, but
I think it's just saying that as a board, this is a priority for us.
a goal?
Yeah, so not necessarily that it's a all in or nothing, but at least make everyone aware that this is something that as a board we're going to try to move forward as a group on,
It would
whether it
basically be
sticks or not.
tabled till next spring when we discuss positions is really what's happening.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I think it just sends the message that when those conversations are being held, that if they propose something that looks like this, there's a good chance the board will vote for it. It doesn't mean we're not forcing their hand, but we're just saying if you want it, this is an item that would potentially get votes.
So, I mean, is there a motion on the?
So Dr. Lyman made a motion to amend item 5U to include that everything listed there is a budget priority for the 25-26 school year, along with adding a full-time music teacher. Is there a second to Dr. Lyman's motion? Mr. Noggle. Any discussion on that?
So we're just voting on the amendment.
Yes.
and repeat that one more time. So it's everything that's there. And
It is a budget priority for the 25-26 school year, along with adding a full-time music teacher.
What's that mean? Budget priority? We will or won't do it, or we're gonna discuss it when we get to that point?
I think a budget priority, my interpretation would be that would be one of the recommended positions that are, like on the do list.
I think the way I take it is, it would be like when the administrators get together, when that time comes, it's kind of like, hey, this is the cheat sheet that the board has made clear that this is what their priorities are. So we need to make sure that whatever we are requesting has room, because the board has made clear that they want this.
So that list of items that we bring forth as positions, the board is directing that these be in that list.
And again, this doesn't lock us into saying, yep, we have to do it just as listed, but.
Right. I mean, a lot can change between now and when we approve a budget.
Well, at least the kids got hope. So at At least the kids got hope.
Yes.
Parents have hope.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Levi Kressler,
Yes.
Dr. Michael Lyman,
Yes.
Mr. Kurt Noggle,
Yes.
Mr. Fred Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Jim Bard,
No.
Mr. Mike Carey,
Yes.
Mr. Darren Donovan,
Yes.
Mrs. Steph Eberly.
Yes.
Motion carried, 7 yes, 1 no.
Item 5V, real estate appraisal. Administration recommends approval of the attached proposal from Apex Valuation Services to conduct an appraisal of a parcel of land adjacent to district property. The cost of this appraisal was $2,000 and will come from the district fund balance. Is there a motion to approve item 5V?
We're just gonna make a motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Scott, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Carey. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Discussion agenda, item 6A is the curriculum maps. Administration recommends approval of the following curriculum maps for AP Physics and Physics. 6B is the Greyhound Virtual Academy Student Parent Handbook. 6C is the robotics grant. Mrs. Melinda Fowler is seeking approval to apply and accept for a $1,600 grant from the Pennsylvania Association of School Retirees and Grow Financial Associates. 6D is the Board of School Directors meetings for the 25 school year. 6E is the Sunday use of facilities. The Shippensburg Wrestling Booster Club would like to host a wrestling league event at the high school on Sunday, December 15th. 6F is the River Rock Academy contract for the secondary and elementary schools. The school year tuition cost for the 7 secondary student lots is $154 per day, and the tuition for 5 elementary slots are $236. And River Rock provides transportation at a daily rate of $53. 6G is the Hoffman Academy Master Agreement and Addendum. 6H is the Speech Therapy Agreement, which is 36 days at a rate of $595 per school year, and non-routine hours will be billed at a periodic basis of $104 per hour. 6I is the Superintendent's Leadership Network membership. The superintendent is seeking approval to join and pay for the 24-25 membership into the Superintendent's Leadership Network. The cost of this membership will be $3,000 and will be paid from the superintendent's budget. 6J is the electricity contract periods beyond the July 2025. 6K is the Shippensburg Area Joint School Authority. Administration recommends that the board appoint the following 3 district residents to the Shippensburg Area Joint School Authority in order to transfer the land where the middle school is located from the joint authority to the Shippensburg School District. And that is Mr. Charlie Suiters, Mrs. Becky Wolfinger, and Mrs. Marcy Taylor. 6L administration is the amendment number 3. The administration through the Facilities Committee recommends the approval of the amendment to the agreement with EI Associates for supplemental services related to the NPDES permit work to use and store the excess topsoil from the stadium project. The cost is $12,500 and will be pulled from the contingency project funds and or fund balance. So this dirt pile is gonna be upwards to probably 30,000 by the time we're done.
We're still waiting on ECI's.
There was something else. I can't remember what was attached to that. Something else that they were
vault.
A vault. That was part of the redesign too. So it's not all specific to the topsoil. But yes, it's keeps getting better.
Oh, that's 6I? Whatever.
L?
6L? Why, we're just moving it. We're paying that just to move the dirt pile? So,
No, Mr. Scott, we're paying that for the design to build the berm and for the permitting and getting it through the, help me, Mr. Noggle, the NDS. NPDS. So the engineers have to design the berm. ECI won't move it until they get drawings from ECI. Well, I think a lot of this was explained in the facilities committee.
I think back to what we're talking about, a dirt pile,
We are.
and we're talking about an engineer for a dirt pile.
We're talking about an engineer because when you move dirt on a project that impacts the requirements from NPDS, and I believe was the recommendation of the facilities committee to build a berm for the softball. That berm needs engineering done to make sure that it doesn't collapse, considering topsoil's not intended to be supportive. So yeah, I mean this is the cost to do this.
Well, I have a question about that because who told you we actually had to have engineering done to put the berm over there? K&W?
Now ECI said we're not doing it. To summarize,
Amen.
ECI said we're not doing it until we get drawings from K&W.
It's a dirt pile.
I agree with you.
I'm not blaming you, but it's a dirt pile.
I would certainly hope you would not blame me, Mr. Chairman.
But the dirt's there. It's not moving from the area. I tell you, we're moving it someplace else. I can understand, but the dirt came from there. The dirt's there. Why it got to be engineered? I just
I'd like to ask DCI.
Is this the very first? Did we already write them a check for something else, like to move it and to store it, or is this still part of it, or can we still just say, you know what, we don't need this right now, and we have other needs?
So there's still going to be a cost to get rid of the dirt because we didn't do it during the initial construction. I would assume there's going to be some kind of cost associated with trucking off the dirt like we were supposed to in the project. So this is clearly something that we've met the enemy and it's us. We've decided to do this. Use the dirt, and these are the costs that are associated with that.
The enemy was us by poor planning on our part. This is a commodity that you don't get every day. This should not be a big issue. ECI, K&W have made this a big issue. We have volunteers. If we could figure out how to allow them to do that, we'd move that topsoil pile for a few loads. I apologize that it has gone this way. It shouldn't have had to go this distance.
And we're getting a better seating viewing area for softball?
At one of the construction meetings, the idea came forth that we have this big pile of dirt that the one side of the softball field doesn't allow for spectators. Our lines of sight at that field aren't great. So the idea, I think well-intentioned, was to use this to build a berm so that folks could at least sit, in lawn chairs on that site. That was the driving goal, I believe. When you do that, and again, I'm going off of what I'm told, you still need to run these things by the authorities that govern stormwater and other things. And the construction contractor is not going to build something without the engineers showing them how it can work and be safe. Yeah.
I'm just wondering, talking about a dirt pile, and we're talking in the last board meeting about setting goals, and I can't help but wonder what that $30,000 could have purchased us. Could have got us almost a part-time music teacher or aquatic aid. I'm just wondering if that's still a need.
When you talk about the expenditures coming out of our bond borrowing and try to apply it to hiring a person, the only portion of that would be the cash required to pay back 12 or 13 or whatever the cost of the topsoil pile is. At a 4% loan or thereabouts on a 20 or 25 year loan. So yeah, it is a chunk of money we could have used to purchase something else, but the cash flow, you can't use that total to pay for
Well, it's still how it's contingency funds or fund balance, so it says it could be utilized either way. I'm just saying to some of these,
I agree.
these decisions, it's, we thought it might be something easy. The intentions were good and they were pure, but
Yep, I agree.
hindsight. Citizens' comments regarding non-agenda items. Are there any? I don't believe there are. Board comments. Mr. Noggle.
I got comment. As our meetings have shown, we are having a lot of difficult decisions, in keeping staff, deciding what to do to build, and to move forward. I think it's in our best interest, and I think I talked to Leslie about some other things that we should discuss the potential of having a budget and finance committee. I'm not exactly sure how to go about it, and try to get some forecasting done forward, but I'd like to get it on the agenda so that we can discuss it in a whatever form or fashion to see if we can do that. Maybe have an ad hoc committee, some public help, and see what everybody's ideas or opinions are.
I guess, with the budget and finance, like what is like that mission and vision of that committee? What does that structure look like?
That's what I want to talk about. I'll tell you now, but I'm not exactly sure how to go about it.
Or how are other districts utilizing a smaller subcommittee of the collective budget and finance committee?
I think we need to do forecasting, using traditional data, and try to do some long-range forecasting so that the board has a better look at, or can have a better expectation or a better understanding of the budgets that we deal with. We still haven't resolved elementary issues that may come our way, and I believe that we should look at the revenue side of things and the expenditure side of things, and along with the information we may be getting from PASBO on some evaluations. But I think coming from private sector, that type of an outlook is very helpful in those situations. And I'm open to suggestions on how people want to do it. I know I talked to Fred a little bit about it, and he didn't really want to have some of us involved in it. He wanted to hire a company to do it. Given the cost of things, I think there's enough some help from the public would go a long way.
Yeah, even if we could kind of do like a budget, like the actual budget with the budget, and then that forecast, like tonight when we have something contingent on the next budget, like what is the budget versus the projective, to know like where you're already starting to redline.
Correct. I think it'll turn out well. Might be hard to explain, but I think it'll be good.
Dr. Lyman.
It was a tough meeting. Good work. I like working with you guys. It's a terrible job, but I think we did pretty good tonight. Made some really hard decisions, and I'm sorry that not everybody was pleased with some of the decisions, but it's what we got to do.
Mr. Bard.
I just want to thank Christy for her time here and she served for us, and wish her best of luck in her new adventure.
Mr. Kressler.
Christy, when's your last day?
September 23rd, next board meeting.
You here for that board meeting or not?
I am.
I will save mine for that, because...
Didn't you use it up last time?
No, I did not. I don't think I did. Just a couple things. It just looked like a really successful week. I always give sports updates. Boys soccer beat James Buchanan 7-0. Field hockey beat Big Spring 4-1. I did also see that Kylie Boardman recently scored her 1,000th career point. which is awesome. Girls volleyball did lose to Carlisle 3-0. Girls soccer beat Milton Hershey 5-1. Varsity football Friday night defeated Waynesboro 28-21. Our golf team is having a tremendous season. Last I saw, they were 23-7. There's also a great story about our golf team. I think it was in the Carlisle Sentinel. It really just talked about more than golf, but the togetherness that their team has, like post-game or post-match, I think, post-match, like gatherings and things like that as a team for team dinners. We don't really get a lot of coverage in the Carlisle Sentinel for stuff like that, but it was really good to see and read that story. The last thing I wrote down was just, we talked about it at different times, the progress of the stadium outside. You haven't seen it, the pictures, especially somebody who, I saw some aerial shots, it was amazing. And then the logo went down late last week. So I did a little research, and to the best of my knowledge, we now have the largest Greyhound logo on a high school multi-purpose athletic facility in the state of Pennsylvania. Granted, there's only 3 other Greyhound school districts, and those 2 just have their, like an M or a W, so we could have had a 5-foot Greyhound and been the biggest, but overall I think it does look really good, and I've heard tremendous things from students and such as they come into school to see progress actually being there. So that's all I have.
Mr. Carey.
Just a ditto to Dr. Lyman's comments. Also, you were looking for somebody to take minutes for the meetings. We have 2 students that come in and report. Is there not business classes where that would be a good opportunity for one of them to come in? Not one of necessarily them, but anyone in the business. In every meeting, a student can come out of the volunteer and come in and do it and give them some hands-on experience. Quite honestly, it would be better than me doing it anyhow, so I'm okay with that.
You say business, but I would just add possibly like a government class, because this is kind of like tied to that.
Just food for thought.
Mr. Scott.
Oh, I said all I gotta say tonight. And was it second quarter? Okay.
Mr. Donovan.
Yeah, just regards to like the music teacher and the aquatics program, I would love to say yes to like all these things right away. I think everybody would, but a lot of moving parts operating a school district, and we just got to be mindful of all those things that occur, and it doesn't give us the flexibility to just say yes to things right away. Just want to make that clear on my part. That's where I stand with it.
So just to, on that same note, I reflecting on some of the progress that we've made as a board. There's been times past when we would have opposing views and vote differently, and some individuals, just couldn't move past that no vote and took it personal. So I just wanted to highlight some of the personal growth that we literally were able to have differing opinions, but move on, but still find a way to compromise and to plan and move forward. So I just want to say congratulations and to thank you all for that. Date savers, September 12th, the Transportation Committee is meeting. September 19th, Facilities Committee. September 25th, Safety and Security, and on September 18th, there is a 2-hour early dismissal for an Act 80.
Hold on. Superintendent, we'll still have the 25th facility meeting on the 25th. You said something about cutting back.
So we have a safety and security meeting on the 25th.
But what's before
We
that?
have facilities on the 19th.
19th, are we going to still have that, or we're cutting back?
I mean, I would defer to Mr. Naga. We can talk about the agenda. Yeah.
Okay,
So we're able to cancel them, Mr. Scott, if we don't have
I
enough.
know you said something about it. I just wanted to know.
Right.
I guess all 3 of them